Imagine a universe just functioning in flawless perfection, like a pristine reality where every single element, from the microscopic to the cosmic, is explicitly evaluated by the creator and declared, good.
Right, just absolute unfractured perfection. There's no friction at all. There's no decay.
Exactly. And then the architect of this entire universe looks at his absolute crowning achievement, the very center of this masterpiece, and declares a structural failure.
Yeah, it's a staggering moment. It completely breaks the rhythm of creation.
It really does. I'm your host, Daniel Moreau, and welcome to Between the Verses, the audio deep dive where we take the text you think you know, slow all the way down, and, read the spaces in between. Sitting across from me is our resident expert and my sister, Hannah Moreau.
Hey, everyone. We are looking at the foundational architecture of reality today. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore a text called Between the Verses, unpacking the mysteries of Eden, focusing specifically on the opening chapters of Genesis.
And if you were listening to this, you likely already know the basic narrative.
Oh, for sure. You know about the garden, the tree, the serpent, the fall. But this isn't a Sunday school recap.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
When you put these chapters under a linguistic and theological microscope, you uncover a landscape that's just layered with anomalies. I mean, chronological gaps, profound mysteries. It's wild.
It really is. But before we pull back the curtain on this, we need to establish the ground rules for you, the listener. You are essentially the third person at this table today.
Right. Pull up a chair.
Exactly. And as we dissect these texts, our golden rule is strict. We are here to thoughtfully explore what the text explicitly says, and we will acknowledge what it absolutely does not say.
Yeah, we're not in the business of building concrete doctrine on pure speculation. Because the anomalies we're going to cover, like the physics of time being the first thing made holy, or the grueling psychological crucible of Adam's loneliness.
Oh, man, that part is so intense.
Right. And the highly strategic, frankly, unsettling reason the serpent targeted Eve instead of Adam, these are mysteries that invite us to read slowly. We aren't going to just, invent answers to give you closure.
Because the closure isn't the point, honestly. The mechanics of these events are what matter. So let's look at the sheer structural anomaly of the creation week itself.
Yeah, let's dive into that.
The source text brings up this really jarring textual break in Genesis 1 that is completely invisible if you are just speed reading through it.
Oh, I totally missed it for years.
Most people do.
Yeah.
Because for the first 6 days, the narrative operates on this strict metronomic cadence. God creates, and the text concludes the day's work with a highly specific formula.
And there was evening and there was morning.
Exactly. Day 1, evening and morning. Day 2, evening and morning. It is a drumbeat establishing the boundaries of time and work.
But then you hit the seventh day, and the metronome it abruptly stops.
It just cuts out. God rests. He blesses the seventh day. He sanctifies it. But that rhythmic closing phrase is completely absent.
Yeah, there is no evening and morning. The seventh day is left hanging open, unclosed.
And what is fascinating here is not just the grammatical omission, but the theological implication of what God is actually doing. We are at the dawn of existence, right?
Right.
No religion, no rituals, no structures exist yet. And the very first thing in all of Scripture that God designates as holy, meaning set apart, sacred, divine, is not a physical object.
He is a block of time.
Yes, a block of time.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Think about the physics of that. Our default human setting is to associate holiness with geography or physical matter.
Totally. We want to touch it or visit it.
Right. We build towering cathedrals with vaulted ceilings. We construct golden altars. We think of sacred space as a coordinate you can travel to.
A destination.
Exactly. But God bypassed matter entirely and built the first cathedral out of time. It is an architecture of minutes and hours. You don't walk into it. You wait for it to arrive, and you just, exist within its rhythm.
That is beautifully put. And that rhythm, 6 periods of labor followed by 1 period of cessation, it becomes the unalterable cadence of the cosmos.
Yeah, it's baked into reality.
By sanctifying time, God is essentially validating human limitation before it's even a problem. He is embedding the concept of rest into the fabric of reality before humanity even has the chance to become exhausted.
Which is such a profound grace.
It is. But the source text pushes this concept of the creation week into a highly mathematical, almost prophetic curiosity. It leans on later biblical texts that attempt to quantify how God interacts with time.
Right, and this is where we have to tread really carefully.
For sure.
The text points to Psalm 90, verse 4, which states, "For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past."
And then the Apostle Peter picks that up too. He writes in his second epistle, "With the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day."
So students of Scripture have looked at that specific mathematical ratio for millennia, right? And they've overlaid it onto the Genesis creation week.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it gets wild. If you apply the formula literally like one day equates to exactly 1,000 years, the 6 days of divine work transform into a chronological blueprint.
Right. It suggests a framework of 6,000 years of human striving, history, and labor.
Followed by the 7th day, which would equate to a final millennium of divine rest. 6,000 years of human history, 1,000 years of peace.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back on this just a bit.
Go for it.
Because it feels dangerously close to the exact kind of speculative doctrine we promise not to build. I mean, neither the psalmist nor Peter was writing a commentary on the mechanics of Genesis 1, right?
Right. They were addressing different contexts entirely.
Yeah, they were making philosophical statements about the eternal nature of God. Aren't we just reverse engineering an eschatological prophecy out of ancient poetry?
And that is the exact tension the source text highlights. You know, is it a strict, literal, prophetic timetable? Or is it purely a symbolic illustration designed to show that human history isn't just a chaotic sequence of random events?
Right, that it's actually a structured narrative moving toward a definitive conclusion.
Exactly. The text leaves that unresolved. We cannot definitively prove the 6,000-year theory, but what we can definitively prove is the absolute necessity of the pattern. The cessation of striving is the first thing God called holy.
And the absence of the evening and morning on that 7th day feels like an open door, inviting humanity into an eternal state of that rest.
That's a great way to look at it.
But humanity doesn't stay in that state. The narrative shifts abruptly. We go from this sweeping symphonic rhythm of perfection to a sudden, highly localized crisis.
The crescendo of creation just hits a massive wall. Throughout Genesis 1, the refrain is constant, right? Light is good, land is good, vegetation is good.
Good.
Yeah, it's on repeat. And then we arrive at the creation of man. Adam is formed from the dust, receives the breath of life, and is placed in a perfectly calibrated ecosystem to tend the garden.
He is completely biologically viable.
Completely. Which makes God's next observation incredibly jarring. God looks at this pristine, uncorrupted human in a perfect environment and says, "It is not good that the man should be alone."
It is the first not good in the history of the universe.
The very first. And we have to analyze the mechanism of this deficiency. Because the text is clear that Adam was created as a physically mature, anatomically complete male.
Right. He wasn't missing limbs. He wasn't biologically unfinished.
Exactly. The not good is not a physical defect. It is a profound structural and relational void.
I always try to visualize what it means to be created with a capacity for something that doesn't even exist yet in the universe.
Right. How do you even comprehend that?
Well, think of a brilliantly engineered piece of hardware, like a supercomputer. It is fully assembled, the power is flowing, the processor is flawless.
Okay, I follow you.
But on the back panel, there is a very specific, uniquely shaped open port. It's designed to receive a connection, but the manufacturer hasn't actually invented the cable yet.
Oh, wow. That's good.
The port is just sitting there, open, waiting for an input that the computer doesn't even know how to process.
That analogy perfectly captures the theology of the moment. God deliberately designed the open port. He programmed the relational void into Adam's architecture before the solution existed.
Yeah.
God recognized Adam's need for a companion before Adam had the vocabulary to ask for one, or even the self-awareness to feel the psychological ache of isolation.
But instead of just instantly inventing the cable and plugging it in, instead of snapping his fingers and creating Eve the millisecond, he declared the situation not good. God does something that seems almost cruel if you don't understand the psychology behind it.
Right. He forces Adam to confront the void.
He initiates an incredibly deliberate, exhaustive process. Genesis tells us that God brings the animals to Adam to be named.
The livestock, the birds of the heavens, the beasts of the field.
And we have to strip away the childhood imagery here. This wasn't a breezy afternoon sitting under an apple tree pointing at a puppy and saying, "Oh, that's a dog."
No, absolutely not. This was an immense cognitive crucible.
You are talking about raw taxonomy. Adam is looking at the biological essence of every creature and assigning it a fundamental identity. The volume of data processing is staggering.
It really is. But the intellectual weight of the task is nothing compared to the emotional trauma of it.
Yeah, that's the real point.
Because as Adam is naming these creatures, he is observing a relentless, undeniable pattern.
They're coming in pairs, male and female.
The biological corresponding halves. As Adam processes the lion, he sees the lioness. He sees the eagles, the cattle, the wolves, pair after pair moving in tandem.
And the source text asks us to imagine the rising tide of isolation Adam must have experienced with every passing animal.
He is the ultimate outsider. He is classifying a world of companionship that he is entirely excluded from.
And we have to remember the unseen audience in this moment, too, because the angels that watched over the Garden of Eden noticed everything.
Oh, absolutely.
They are witnessing this unfractured, perfect world, and they are watching this lone, human, meticulously cataloging pairs of animals. They see the structural void playing out in real time before Eve is even a concept to Adam.
The angels are observing the first ache of loneliness in the universe. That's heavy.
It is. And the conclusion of the naming process is one of the heaviest sentences in the text. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found.
Right. The entire exercise was a setup.
Yeah, it wasn't about cataloging biology. It was an experiential preparation for Eve's creation. God was forcing Adam to feel the precise shape of his own emptiness so that he would actually understand the magnitude of the gift when it arrived.
The need had to be awakened. But, the source text also dives into the massive, tantalizing mysteries surrounding this event that the Bible leaves entirely unanswered. Well, for instance, the taxonomy list specifically mentions livestock, birds, and beasts of the field. It completely omits marine life.
Oh, interesting. Did Adam name the sea creatures?
The text is totally silent on it. We don't know.
And the linguistic mystery is even deeper, frankly. Like, what was the actual data coming out of Adam's mouth?
Oh, pre-Babel linguistics.
Yes. The original unfractured tongue of Eden. When Adam looked at a predator, what phonetic sound did he actually produce?
Right. What did lions sound like in the garden?
Are the roots of that original Adamic language completely obliterated by the confusion of languages at the Tower of Babel? Or do fragments of it still exist, just buried deep in ancient dialects?
Linguists and theologians have debated that for centuries. The frustrating, beautiful reality is that we simply don't have the audio recording of Eden.
Yeah, the original vocabulary is lost to history.
But the theological data remains. Adam survived a psychological gauntlet that proved he was profoundly unique and utterly alone in the physical realm.
But he wasn't entirely alone.
No, he wasn't.
Because while he lacked a physical peer, he possessed something that would inadvertently set the stage for the fall of humanity. He had an exclusive, chronologically distinct period of solo fellowship with the Creator.
This is a variable that is constantly overlooked, but it is the key to understanding the mechanics of the temptation.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Adam existed before Eve. Therefore, Adam had a direct, unmediated relationship with God before Eve was ever formed. The text explicitly outlines this timeline.
Right. God places Adam in the garden. God gives Adam the direct, spoken command regarding the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
The text says, "You may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die."
Adam heard that auditory data directly from the source.
Exactly. And beyond just the command, Genesis describes a dynamic where God walked in the garden in the cool or the breezy part of the day.
Try to grasp the sheer gravity of that. Adam is receiving his theology, his understanding of reality, directly through unfiltered conversations with the being who literally spoke physics into existence.
Right. He is accumulating a massive reservoir of firsthand experiential data.
It is the ultimate institutional memory. I mean, think about how information degrades when it is passed down. Adam is the first generation. He was there when the foundational rules of the universe were articulated.
So when Eve is finally created, she enters into a pre-existing paradigm.
Which means, by sheer necessity of physics and time, Eve's relationship with the law of the garden is second generation.
She receives the prohibition about the tree secondhand. She is reliant on Adam's transmission of that data.
Now, I want to be incredibly precise here for you listening. This chronological gap does not imply that Eve was biologically weaker or intellectually inferior or less spiritually valuable.
No, not at all.
That is a terrible theological trope that has been weaponized for centuries. This is strictly a matter of timeline and data transmission.
Exactly. It is a vulnerability in the chain of custody of information. And that specific vulnerability is exactly what the enemy weaponizes.
Which brings us to the temptation. When the serpent enters the narrative, he makes a highly calculated strategic choice.
He bypasses Adam entirely and approaches Eve.
The source text acknowledges that the Bible doesn't explicitly state why Satan targeted Eve. But if you analyze the tactical board, the answer is just glaringly obvious.
Satan operates by looking for the path of least resistance. He is hunting for the angle where deception has the highest mathematical probability of success.
And again, going back to the audience in the spiritual realm, the angels that watched over the Garden of Eden noticed everything. They saw the relational dynamic between Adam, Eve, and God.
They knew the timeline.
Exactly. Satan, as a fallen spiritual being, knew the timeline too. He knew who had the first-hand data and who had the second-hand data. If he approaches Adam, he's going up against a wall of first-hand institutional memory.
Adam heard the command directly from God, but Eve received the parameters of the rule from Adam. This raises an important question about the nature of temptation.
What's that?
Satan exploits the space between what God actually said and how we interpret what we heard. He attacks the transmission of the data.
His opening move is brilliant and malicious. Did God actually say? He isn't immediately challenging God's authority. He is introducing static into the transmission line.
He is trying to pry open a shadow of a doubt about secondhand information.
Right. If he asks Adam that question, Adam shuts it down instantly. Yes, he said it. I was standing right there. But with Eve, there's just enough chronological distance from the original event for the seed of doubt to take root.
He exploited a timeline, but the strategy of the attack is only half the mystery, honestly. The other half is the sheer bizarre mechanics of the encounter itself.
The talking snake.
The talking snake. The serpent speaks. It constructs a complex, twisting, philosophical argument about the nature of God's goodness. And the most shocking anomaly in Genesis chapter 3 is not that the serpent talks.
The anomaly is that Eve doesn't care.
Exactly. There is absolutely zero indication in the Hebrew text of shock, terror, or confusion. She doesn't gasp.
She doesn't question the biological impossibility of a reptile possessing the vocal apparatus or the cognitive capacity to debate theology.
She engages in the dialogue as seamlessly as if she were talking to Adam.
Why doesn't she react to the impossible?
Well, the source text outlines two major theories that attempt to explain the mechanics of this interaction, because we have to figure out how this actually worked on a physical or psychological level.
I have always wrestled with this, because you either have to suspend all laws of biology or you have to assume Eve was under some kind of hypnotic spell. What is the first theory?
The first is essentially the supernatural ventriloquism theory.
Okay.
This posits that Satan, operating as an immensely powerful spiritual entity, hijacked the physical form of the serpent. The miracle of the talking animal was indeed a radical break from the laws of nature, but the psychological misdirection was so intense that Eve missed it entirely.
Like a master illusionist. A magician creates a massive distraction with his left hand, so your brain completely ignores the impossible thing happening in his right hand.
Exactly. The serpent introduces an existential threat, the idea that God is withholding goodness.
And that concept is so philosophically radioactive to an uncorrupted human mind that her brain just bypasses the talking snake alert and immediately engages in defending her worldview.
Her attention is completely hijacked by the data being presented, blinding her to the impossible mechanics of the messenger. It is a highly plausible psychological explanation.
It makes sense.
But there is a second theory that forces us to completely rethink the nature of the Edenic ecosystem.
The pre-fall biology theory.
Right. This theory suggests that the physical and relational laws governing humanity and the animal kingdom were fundamentally different before the corruption of sin.
We base our understanding of animal intelligence and communication on a post-fall reality, where the world is fractured and dominion is often characterized by fear.
But Eden was an unfractured paradigm. If humans were tasked with stewarding and naming the animals, is it possible that communication barriers were completely different?
Was there some form of communion, telepathic or linguistic, that was utterly severed when the curse hit the earth?
We have to look at how Scripture treats talking animals elsewhere to find clues. The source text specifically points to the only other instance in the Bible, Balaam and his donkey in the book of Numbers.
Oh, right.
In that narrative, an angel blocks the path, the donkey refuses to move, Balaam strikes it, and the donkey speaks to him.
But the mechanics of that story are entirely different. The author of Numbers explicitly inserts a caveat.
Yes.
The text says, then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey. It gives you the operational mechanism. It tells the reader this is a specific, isolated, divine miracle.
Genesis provides zero caveats for the serpent. It simply states, he said to the woman.
Which leaves the door wide open to the possibility that talking to the creatures of the garden was simply a baseline feature of the pre-fall experience.
Eve didn't panic because, in an uncorrupted world, communion between species wasn't an anomaly. We simply do not possess the scientific or historical data to prove it either way.
Which brings us to the ultimate question for you, the listener. How are we supposed to process this?
It's a lot to take in.
We live in an era of empirical data, smartphones, and the scientific method. We are sitting here debating 6,000-year prophetic clocks, lost pre-Babel languages, and telepathic ecosystems.
Right.
How do we digest these wild, unanswerable mysteries without losing our grip on the core theology of the text?
By recognizing the primary function of the text. The opening chapters of Genesis were not written to serve as a comprehensive scientific textbook or an exhaustive historical encyclopedia.
They were written to establish the bedrock of reality.
Exactly. They provide the exact data we need. God is the sovereign, intentional architect. Humanity is uniquely crafted for fellowship, but inherently vulnerable to deception.
The text explains the precise origin of the fracture in our world, and therefore establishes the absolute necessity of redemption.
The foundation is impenetrable. But the blank spaces, the missing evening and morning, the undocumented days of Adam's isolation, the missing vocal cords of the serpent, those aren't errors in the manuscript.
No, what if those mysteries are intentional negative space?
They demand humility. We are finite processors trying to download the infinite actions of an eternal being.
Yeah.
If the text answered every single mechanical question, it would reduce the creator to a manageable, finite equation. The mysteries invite us into a posture of awe. They force us to engage with the text in an ongoing, lifelong conversation rather than just solving it like a math problem and walking away.
You don't solve God. You stand in awe of him. And when you slow down and read the spaces in between, the text comes entirely alive.
That is the entire purpose of this deep dive.
And as we wrap up this session, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to turn over in your mind this week.
Yeah, something to chew on.
We spent a lot of time analyzing the psychological trauma of Adam's solitude, that long, grueling process of naming the animals and realizing his own structural void. But fast forward to the moment God finally brings Eve to him.
The first recorded words of Adam after seeing her aren't just speech, they are poetry. This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh.
Think about the explosive relief in that phrase. At last. The void was finally filled. So here's the question for you to explore on your own.
What are the not good areas of waiting in your own life right now?
The spaces where you feel a structural lack. And how might the architect of time be using that exact isolation, that exact delay, to build your capacity to actually recognize and treasure the good when it finally arrives?
That changes the entire perspective on waiting, doesn't it?
It really does. We hope this conversation shifted something for you today. Thank you for pulling up a chair and exploring with us on Between the Verses. Make sure you subscribe to our audio content wherever you are listening right now, and definitely come back to join us for our next deep dive into Genesis. Because as we push further into the narrative, the implications get pretty juicy.
Oh, they definitely do.
Until then, keep reading, keep questioning, and keep kicking. We'll see you next time.